أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب زدني علما رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير ثم أما بعد والحمد لله. Respected brothers and sisters, welcome to another lesson of our weekly class of Riyadus Saliheen, delivered from here in Darul, alhamdulillah, live from here on Thursday evenings. Last week, bifadlillah azza wa jal, by the mercy and by the blessing of Allah, we have reached the hadith number 1020, and we are still in the section of virtues, and the virtues that we are currently learning and discussing are the virtues of reciting the Qur'an, the virtues of learning the Qur'an, the virtues of particular ayat of the Qur'an. So the last lesson was more focused on particular ayat and particular surahs which have more of a weight, if you like, or they have a speciality to them in comparison to the other surah in the Qur'an. And so in the beginning of that chapter we spoke about, for example, the virtues of Surah Al-Fatiha and so on and so forth. And then we stopped at the hadith in which we are discussing the virtue of Ayatul Kursi. And this is the hadith which has been narrated by the Sahabi Al-Jalil by the name of, just before this one here, Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu wardah, says, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يا أبا المنذر. This hadith has been narrated by Sayyidina Ubay ibn Ka'b radiyallahu anhu wardah. He is saying the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "O Aba al-Mundhir, do you know which ayah in the Kitab of Allah is the most great, the greatest ayah in the Qur'an?" He replied in saying, "Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, i.e. the Ayatul Kursi." فضرب في صدري, so he basically put his hand on my chest, or he hit my chest, if you like that. He touched his chest with his hand, and then he says, ليهنك العلم أبا المنذر, that may Allah give you more blessing in your knowledge, O Abul Munzir, meaning this is indeed true and this is indeed correct, that the greatest ayah in the Qur'an is indeed the Ayatul Kursi. Now, the reason why that is has been explained by scholars. And from the scholars, for example, Imam ibn Kathir says, who is the great Mufassir, he says that this Ayatul Kursi is actually a collection of 10 separate phrases. And these phrases in this ayah are most beloved to Allah and carry their weight and have their power because they are an evidence of Allah's oneness in His uluhiyyah, in the fact that He is Lord and He is the only one deserving of worship and so on. So if you, for example, look at the first phrase, we say Allah says, Allahu la ilaha illahu. This phrase, Allahu la ilaha illahu. This is Allah Azza wa Jal is informing us that He alone deserves to be worshipped. Now we come to Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum. This phrase, of course, it means Al-Hayy, the one that is ever living. Al-Qayyum, who is the maintainer, and He is the Al-Qayyim, the one that makes other things also stand. So this is, He is alone in charge or deserving of worship. Sorry, He is alone. Allah Azza wa Jal, He never dies and He is forever living, and everything else relies upon Him. The first one is talking about the first phrase, Allahu la ilaha illahu. Allah alone deserves to worship. Then Al-Hayy Al-Qayyum, everything He is ever living and everything relies upon Him. La ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. And no deficiency, no weakness, no tiredness, no sleep can ever overcome Him. So this is another phrase within the ayah which is talking about the kamal of Allah and the perfection of Allah. Lahu ma fi samawati wa ma fi al-ard. This is informing us that everything is in His kingdom, in His dominion. He owns everything, and everything is under His qudra, His qahar, and His sultan. And then it says, Man dha alladhi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'idhni. He no one can intercede on behalf of anybody except for by the permission of Allah. And so this is indeed a part of our aqidah, that Allah Azza wa Jalla has allowed shafa'ah, intercession in front of Allah by different people. So for example, from the greatest shafa'ah is the intercession of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You say all the time, he will intercede on behalf of the whole of humanity and the whole of jinn kind to ask Allah to begin the judgment. Okay, and this is the meaning of that he will be عَسَىٰ أَن يَبْعَثَكَ رَبُّكَ مَقَامًا مَحْمُودًا. Allah will raise him to a praiseworthy station. He's Muhammad, he's praised, the Prophet ﷺ is praised in this dunya and also above in the heavens. And he is also Ahmad, he is the most purely praised. And he is also has the maqam mahmud, the praiseworthy station. And that is that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah Azza wa Jalla will not begin judgment for years and years. And that would be thousands of years in our calculation. And humanity and jinkan will be frustrated. They will be extremely worried and scared. They will be in extreme boiling heat. All of the difficulties and tremors of Yawm al-Qiyamah, inshallah, we'll be covering some of that in our next Islamic Studies class on coming Wednesday, because we've reached the 5th article of faith, which is wal Yawm al-Akhir, to believe in the last day. And so we're going to unpack that and talk a bit more about Yawm al-Qiyamah. But Yawm al-Qiyamah, on that day, in the tremors and in the terrors of Yawm al-Qiyamah, in the fear, because Allah Azza wa Jalla will be in the most angry, most anger that he ever has been, will be on that day. And that's how he describes it. He says, ghadib, he is, we translate it as anger. And so this is the day upon which there is a lot of fear, a lot of frustration, and everyone just wants the Qiyamah and the judgment to begin. And so they will go, as the hadith is long, and in the hadith we learn that they will first, humanity at large, humanity, the whole of humanity, and their representatives, and the jinn kind, and the representatives, will want to ask Allah to start judgment. But no one will have the audacity to speak to Allah, because to speak to Allah Azza wa Jal needs special permission on that day. And so they will go to Adam, and Adam ﷺ will say, I am not suitable for that job, and he mentions some of the mistakes that he made. And then they will go to other Anbiya, they will go to Nuh, and they will go to Ibrahim, and so on. They will go to Musa and so on. And then eventually they will come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say, I am suitable for that job, and he will prostrate to Allah, and he will praise Allah in words that Allah Azza wa Jalla will teach him on that moment. And after he praises Allah for a long period of time, Allah will tell him, O Muhammad, raise your head and ask what you want, and you shall be given it. And so he will intercede on behalf of the whole of existence, humanity and jinn, and say, Oh Allah, just begin judgment. And so that's one type of shafa'ah and intercession. Allah has interceded to say on behalf of someone else, be kind to that person, be generous to that person, begin judgment, and so on. So shafa'ah is established, it's there. Allah has given it to the Anbiya. Allah has also, for example, given the ability of shafa'ah to the Saliheen. A pious person will have the ability to intercede on behalf of a number of people. And it depends, depending on how pious they are, the number will be larger and larger, depending on how beloved they are to Allah. A salih person, who is a abid, who is a knowledgeable person who worships Allah properly, is pious, is devoted, Allah will give them that ability, that honor to say, because they're a friend of Allah, Allah will allow for them to intercede. A hafidh al-Qur'an will have the ability to intercede on behalf of 10 people. And say, Allah, oh Allah, forgive them and let them come to Jannah with me. A friend will be able to intercede on behalf of the other friend, if they're a good person, if they're pious and beloved to Allah themselves. A father will be able to intercede on behalf of his children if they are both pious, and so on. But the reality is, all of that is depending upon Allah's agreement. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. No one can intercede in front of Allah on behalf of anyone except for by the permission of Allah. بَلْ لِلَّهِ الشَّفَاعَةُ جَمِيعًا. Allah is in charge of all shafa'ah. So intercede as you may wish, if you like. But it will have to be by the permission of Allah, and Allah has the ultimate authority to sign it off and to agree upon it. And that is, again, going back to the qudrah and the power and the might and ultimate authority of Allah. That even the Prophet Muhammad, his shafa'ah is dependent upon Allah's permission. And it's important to clarify that, is because sometimes people get confused in their love for the Prophet such that they raise him to a status of as if almost nearness to the Khaliq himself, and this is impossible. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Allah is Rabb, Allah is Khaliq, this is Abd. Wa anna Muhammadan what? Abduhu wa rasuluh. He is his servant at the end of the day. And so on. So this phrase is saying, Man dha alladhi yashfa'u 'indahu illa bi'idhnihi. No one can intercede on behalf of anyone in front of Allah except for by His permission. And so that's again a reconfirming Allah's ultimate authority and power and might. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. This is an evidence of the fact that Allah has all knowledge of the past and of the future, of the back and the front, of every direction in space and in time. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. And Allah Azza wa Jal has certain knowledge that He's given us, but He has more knowledge that He has not given us. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ عِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. Allah has, and this is also very important because some people will assume that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ knows all of ghaib, and this is not true. The Prophet ﷺ knows certain unseen truths, the amount by which Allah Azza wa Jal has taught him. Only that which Allah Azza wa Jal has taught him, that amount. But to say that he has knowledge of ghaib like Allah, this is untrue. This is not from evident from the Qur'an or from the Sunnah. Yes, you may come and quote to me some of the aqwal of the mufassirin, but this is taken to mean, to refer to, that they say that he has knowledge of ghaib, of the unseen. It is understood that they are talking about he has knowledge of the ghaib and the unseen, that which Allah Azza wa Jalla has shown him and taught him. Because the Prophet ﷺ himself says in so many hadith, we don't go into a long tangent about that topic, but he himself has said that he confirmed that he doesn't have all knowledge. Sometimes a person may come and tell him a certain story, present a case, and they may be so persuasive and so convincing. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ may be giving a judgment wrong. Had he known ghaib, that would have been the case. And so other evidence of that such. But the point is, this phrase is saying, no one has knowledge of that which Allah has secured for himself, or only for himself, except for Allah himself. And that's also confirmed in the Qur'an where Allah says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ. Indeed, Allah alone, عِنْدَهُ, with him, meaning secured with him. No one can come close to it. Even the malaika don't know. The angels don't know. عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ, the knowledge of the hour. As you know, Israfil, the angel in charge of blowing the trumpet, his eyes are glazed. Glazed meaning they're like frozen. Because he doesn't blink. Because he continues to stare at Arsh of Ar-Rahman, continues to stare at and look at the direction of the Arsh and the throne of Allah, as if his eyes are frozen because he's not blinking, just in case he blinks and he misses the command. Subhanallah. And that's how close Qiyamah is. And he's been like that since the beginning of his creation. And so no one knows when the hour is. Even the angel in charge of blowing the trumpet doesn't know. He will be told when it is. So certain knowledge that Allah Azza wa Jalla has preserved within His own knowledge is ghaib. And إِنَّ اللَّهَ عِنْدَهُ عِلْمُ السَّاعَةِ وَيُنَزِّلُ الْغَيْثَ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي الْأَرْحَامِ وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ مَاذَا تَكْسِبُ غَدًا. No soul knows what they shall earn tomorrow. وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ. No soul can know where they shall die. You may fall ill here, you might think you're dying here, but subhanallah, you may end up in a different land and end up dying there. And there are many, many stories of that. So this is again, it's confirming the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal has the ultimate knowledge, the knowledge of the ghaib, and alimul ghaibi was shahada. He is the knower of the ghaib and was apparent, al-kabir, the greatest, al-muta'al, the highest. وَسِعَ كُرْسِيهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His kursi is encompassing everything, the heavens and the earths. And there are some descriptions to that. But the point is, وَلَا يَؤُدْهُ حِفْظُهُمَا وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. And it is not impossible, it is not difficult for Allah Azza wa Jalla to protect and to oversee everything. Some may think how, it may be too big for them to imagine. How does Allah take care of in His Hayy and Qayyum and maintain now every single ant and every single insect and every single leaf and every single raindrop and every single snowflake? Wherever and whenever they be, in whichever solar system, whichever galaxy in the universe or beyond the universe they may be. Allah knows the minutest of every single detail of the past and of the future and of the possible outcomes. All of that is counted and measured. إِنَّا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدَرٍ. Everything we have created in perfection and measure. And Allah has knowledge of everything. Some may think this is too much. Allah is saying, وَلَا يَؤُدُ حِفْظُهُمَا. Allah is not even an issue for Him. His power and His might is not even an issue. وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ. He is al-kabir al-muta'al. He is the highest al-azim. So this is why the Ayatul Kursi is so immensely powerful. Because of the meaning that it holds. Because of the praise of Allah that it holds. Because of these 10 points and 10 jumal that it holds within this ayah, which are confirming Allah's ultimate authority and power. And such is the power of the Ayatul Kursi that even shaitan and jinn themselves confess that they have no authority or power over a person who recites it, as you shall soon learn now. And we spoke about Ayatul Kursi last week as well. We said Ayatul Kursi is the best protection. You know, so many people come and say, I have this ruqya issue, I have this, I get scared. The best solution is, wallahi, is in the Quranic remedy, is within the ruqya of Qur'an and Sunnah. And we said last time also, we spoke a little bit about the raqis. So many raqis out there, and it's very hard to verify which one is authentic, which one is not, because we don't have a HMC for raqis, Halal Monitoring Committee, or RMC, Ruqya Monitoring Committee. We don't have that. So a good way, a good indicator is that a raqi who is encouraging you towards the du'as and the ayat and the wird of the Qur'an and the Sunnah, the adhkar of the evening and the morning, this is a good sign. Otherwise, a fake raqi, a money-making raqi who's there just for the business will say, keep on coming to me. He's not going to teach you anything. He's not going to teach you to stand by your own feet. But the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has taught us the best solution for you, everyone that is suffering from any sort of problem, whether it be ayn related, evil eye related, magic related, depression related, any other form of illness related, Ayatul Kursi, take by it and never leave it. Recite it in the morning, recite it in the evening. Recite it after every single salah. Recite it when you sleep. Recite it when you leave your home. Recite it when you drive your car. Ayatul Kursi is immensely powerful. And so it's a blessing from Allah. And that's why when the Prophet ﷺ asked Ubay ibn Ka'ab, what is the greatest ayah? He said this, he hit his chest and he said, may Allah bless you with more knowledge, because it shows to know the fact, the power of this Ayatul Kursi is a blessing in and of itself. And that was the hadith that we stopped at last week. As for the next hadith, it is narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu arda, in which he says that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wakkalani, he made me wakil, he made me the in charge of, he made me the representative of zakat. بحفظ زكاة رمضان, to look after the zakat of Ramadan, which is the fitr, zakat of the fitr, Eid al-Fitr. فأتاني آت, a man came to me, فجعل يحثو من الطعام, he started to take from the food, because they used to give in dates, they used to give in barley, they used to give in they used to give whichever way they used to give, their zakat they used to give, and so they were giving. He started to eat from the food. فأخذته فقلت. This is a story narrated by who? Sayyidina Abu Hurairah. And وما أدراك وما يدريك من أبو هريرة. How can you know who Abu Hurairah is? Because his biography is an issue itself. It's something to study, it's something to learn. And this hadith is another evidence of what station and position he holds in the sight of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, such that he entrusted him with the zakat of Ramadan. And this story you'll see. So this person, supposedly a human being, is taken from the food of the zakat of fitr. So he told him, he grabbed him, he said, what are you doing? فَقُلْتُ لَهُ لَأَعْرِفَنَّكَ إِلَىٰ لَأَرْفَعَنَّكَ إِلَىٰ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. I'm going to take your case to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. قال إني محتاج. He said, I am in need. وعلي عيال وبي حاجة شديدة. I have got children, I am poor, I'm miskeen, I am very much in need, so let me go. I'm just eating because I'm literally really desperate. فخليت عنه فأصبحت. So I've let him go and then I woke up. So then the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when I saw him at Fajr, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam already knew what happened. He said, Ya Aba Hurairah, ما فعل أسيرك البارحة. What did your prisoner say to you yesterday? فقلت يا رسول الله شكى حاجة وعيال. He told me about some need that he has and he's very poor, so I let him go. فرحمت, so I've been merciful to him. فخليت سبيلا, so I let him go. فقال أما إنه قد كذبك وسيعود. He's lied to you and he will come back again. So فعرفت أنه سيعود. So he knew that he's going to come back. He didn't say that it's shaitan. He just said the man is going to come back again. لقول رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So the next night, فجاء يحث من الطعام, he's coming and taking from the food again. So he said, I'm going to take you to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, please, I am so in need. I am so much in need. I am very desperate. I have children. I have dependents. So I was merciful and I let him go. So the following morning, second time, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Ya Aba Hurairah, how was your prisoner yesterday? He said, Ya Rasulullah, he said he's got needs and whatnot. And so I let him go. فقال, he said that he's lying to you again and he's going to come back a third time. So he came for the third time in the third night and he started to take from the food again, from the zakat of fitr. And he said, I am going to definitely today take you to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then this is the last of the third time. And then he says, you claim that you have, that you're not going to come back again, but then you keep on coming back. What's going on? فَقَالَ دَعْنِي. He said, please let me go. Because I will give you a prize if you let me go. He said, I will teach you some words which will help you so much. He said, what are these words? He says, these are the ayat, these are the words in the ayah of that when you go to bed, then read the Ayatul Kursi, because this ayah will be continuing to protect you by the permission of Allah, and no shaitan can ever come close to you until the morning. Shaitan is saying that to Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So he said, that was his ransom. He said that, he let him go. فَخَلَّيْتُ سَبِيلًا. So he let him go. فَقَالَ لِرَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. The next morning, what did your prisoner do? He said, he claimed that he's going to teach me something which will help me, so I let him go. He said, what are these words? The Prophet asked him, what are these words? He says, if you go to bed, then recite this ayah, which is Ayatul Kursi. And then the Prophet said, said to him that, Ama innahu sadaqa. Today, on this particular point on this ayah, he said the truth. But as for the norms, he's a liar. Sadaqaka wa huwa kadhub. He said the truth today, but he is normally a continuous, all the time he's lying. Shaitan is always lying. So this hadith is once again a proof of the power and the importance of Ayatul Kursi. Never miss Ayatul Kursi when you go to sleep and so on. You know, sometimes in the summer holidays we go to different places with the family. Sometimes with the in-laws, sometimes with the outlaws. No, sometimes with the in-laws, and sometimes with the family. And so we'll go to different places, sometimes we'll go to different locations. And whenever I lead, they usually obviously tell me to lead Salah, so I lead Salatul Maghrib or whatever. And I've made it a habit that whenever I recite in Salatul Maghrib, I recite Ayatul Kursi and Falaq al-Nas in the second rak'ah. So one of my nephews-in-law asked me, why do you do this? Is it because of protection? And I said, yes, it is, because this is a communal ruqyah, if you like. It is so powerful. Give this ruqyah for your children. And sometimes I recite in Darul as well, as a form of reminder of the ayah. And tonight, for example, we recited the first few ayat of Surah Al-Kahf and the last few ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. And I've done that on a few weeks regularly, because I would like that maybe the Musallin will become used to listening. And if you're used to listening, then it's easy for you to memorize. Because if you memorize this ayat, then you will see the benefits, inshallah. You will learn that hadith today as well. So this is yet again another hadith to show us the importance of Ayatul Kursi from being one of the most important ayat in the Qur'an, was powerful. وعن أبي الدرداء رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من حفظ 10 آيات من أول سورة الكهف عصم من الدجال وفي رواية من آخر سورة الكهف. Sayyidina Abu Darda is narrating that the Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever memorizes the first 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf that we recited today, he will be protected from Dajjal. And another narration says the last 10 ayat of Surah Al-Kahf, they will be protected from Dajjal. You might say there's no Dajjal yet, so it doesn't concern me. But know that the confusions and the tricks and the trickery and the confusions of Dajjal will precede him. Towards the end of time, the times itself will be in and of itself the essence, which is the lies, the false association of authority and respect and dignity and power will be given to the wrong people. From the sign of Qiyamah is that people will be taking their leaders as juhal, ignorant people, who will be misguided themselves and they will misguide others. And so on. Amana will be lost, trust will be lost. There will be hardly anyone that you can trust. You can't entrust anybody with anything. And so, what Dajjal represents, which is complete, Dajjal means the one that is the Antichrist and the one that's the biggest liar. In fact, the word Dajjal is used even in amongst muhaddithin sometimes. They say this guy, this narrator is a Dajjal. They don't mean that Dajjal. They mean this guy is making stuff up. He's saying he's hiding the truth. And so the essence of Dajjal is that everything he will claim is false. It's the opposite of truth. He will show you water, but it will be fire. He will show you fire, but it will be Jannah, and so on. The fire that he represents will be the mercy of Allah. He will claim to be God, but he is the biggest liar. He is nothing but a devil in the meaning of he is against Allah. He's a liar. He's a kadhab, and so on. So the protection of Dajjal from Dajjal is needed for everyone at all times, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said that my coming and the coming of Qiyamah is like this. It's very close. And every single Nabi has warned of Dajjal, including our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And so reciting this ayat will protect you in your mind, protect you emotionally perhaps intellectually from the effects of the Dajjalic asr, the Dajjalic time, the Dajjalic influences. Of course, along with that, you have to also take your precautions. If you are someone who's falling into the traps of propaganda, and propaganda is one of the things that the Dajjal uses. Propaganda, the media machine of propaganda, is one of the trickery of even the Sahara, the magicians that Fir'aun employed. One of the biggest tricks and powers of Fir'aun was that he had propaganda. And his propagandists, if you like, were the magicians. And just like the Quraysh, their propaganda was the shi'r. They used to use it as a form of spreading false rumors about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and so on. And so rulers, tyrants, and oppressors, they use this because it's very important to control the narrative. And today's narrative is controlled by your Netflixes, and your Hollywoods, and your Bollywoods, and your news and media outlets. And so it's very important to sieve out the truth from the falsehood and to take everything with a pinch of salt. To always double check, because if a fasiq comes with knowledge, then you have to verify. And most of these guys are not even fasiq, they're a lot worse than that. So it's very important. And so it's important that we recite this ayat and we memorize this ayat of Surah Al-Kahf and make a habit of reciting Surah Al-Kahf, even if not the whole of the surah, at least the first 10 ayat and the last 10 ayat on every single Jum'ah. And the Jum'ah starts from Fajr, of course, but you can recite it if you want. You can recite it from Maghrib or the previous night, but you should recite in the Jum'ah day from Fajr and before Maghrib, ideally before Jum'ah. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما بينما جبريل عليه السلام قاعد عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سمع نقيضا من فوقه فرفع رأسه فقال هذا باب من السماء فتح اليوم ولم يفتح قط إلا اليوم فنزل منه ملك فقال هذا ملك نزل إلى الأرض لم ينزل قط إلا اليوم فسلم وقال أبشر بنورين أوتيتهما لم يؤتهما نبي قبلك فاتحة الكتاب وخواتيم سورة البقرة لم تقرأ بحرف منها إلا أعطيته. Sorry. This hadith is being narrated by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas. Everyone knows him. Abdullah ibn Abbas is the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because Al-Abbas is Ibn Abdul Muttalib is the uncle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so he is narrating, Abdullah ibn Abbas, who was one of the Abadillah, one of the great Abdullahs, who was one of the great scholars, students of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the great narrators of Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one day when Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam was sitting next to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as you know, Sayyidina Jibreel used to come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in different forms, sometimes in the form of a human being. Duhya al-Kalbi used to come in his form, in his shape, appearing to be a man. He was the most handsome of the Sahaba. And it's come in that shape and talk to the Prophet Muhammad. Initially, they didn't know what's going on, as you learn in the Hadith of Jibreel. But then, of course, in this case, they knew that Jibreel was with the Prophet Muhammad. All of a sudden, they heard a massive noise. And so they raised their heads to see what was that noise from above. And so Jibreel taught the Prophet that this is a door of the heaven. Now, this is two words we get confused with: heaven and paradise. Heaven. When we say heaven, we don't mean paradise. We don't mean Jannah. When we say heaven, we mean sama, what's above. That's what it means. Even though sometimes we refer to Jannah as heaven. Inshallah, he goes to heaven. But the more accurate word to use, inshallah, he goes to paradise. Because heaven is referring to the skies itself. So they looked up into the heaven, not at Jannah, rather towards the skies. Though it is correct in some sense, because Jannah itself begins from the higher parts of the samawat, higher parts of the heavens. So they looked up to the heavens, i.e. to the skies. And then so Jibreel ﷺ responds by saying that this is a door of the skies, of the heavens, which has been opened today. And know that the doors have gates. The skies and the heavens have gates. And they have gatekeepers. As is evident from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ of Mi'raj. He went and knocked on the door. And they have gatekeepers. And it's the Qur'an, Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah Al-Jinn that there are guardian angels in each and every single heaven. And no one can go beyond their boundaries. So he's saying that this is a door of heaven that's been opened today, and this door was never ever opened before. And an angel has come down from the skies, from the heavens, and he has never come to this world before. And he came for a purpose. And the purpose is that he came to greet the Prophet ﷺ and tell him some information. He came to give salam to the Prophet ﷺ. So he came and gave salam, this angel that never came to the dunya before, from a door that's never been opened before. فَسَلَّمْ. He gave salam to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And then he told him, take glad tidings, take the good news of Prophet Muhammad. Take the glad tidings of two lights that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given you, that no other Nabi, Prophet has ever been given the same two lights before. And the two lights that you've been given, the light of guidance, the light of protection, the light of illumination, the light of being guided internally, externally, he says, is the Fatiha of the Kitab. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Surah Al-Fatiha. And the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, Amana Rasul bima unzila min Rabbil Alamin. How lightly do we take these surahs? We think it's not a big deal. And yet, the Malak came from a door, from above in the heavens, to inform of its might and of its excellence to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And that was the only visit that he made to this dunya, just to transfer this knowledge. Memorize Surah Al-Fatiha properly. And the Ayatul Kursi. And the last ayat of Surah Al-Baqarah. It's common actually. In fact, a lot of Bangladeshis in masjids and imams will teach, for example, the students, Allahu lillahi huwa Allahu is common. Yasin as well, they'll memorize Surah Al-Fatiha, of course, and the Alam Tara downwards, they'll memorize the Qisar al-Surah, they'll memorize usually. So this is a good thing. Now we come to another section. It's called Babu Istihbab al-Ijtima'i ala al-Qira'ah. It is mustahab that you should gather together to recite the Qur'an. Sometimes someone might say, well, is it allowed to gather and recite the Qur'an in this form? Is it allowed to recite the Qur'an in this together way? Well, here it is. Imam Nawawi is saying it's mustahab. It's not just allowed, it's mustahab. It's rewarded that you gather together to recite the Qur'an of Allah in the masjid, in your homes. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Some people will have an issue. They will nitpick everything. They say, oh, but wait, is this allowed? A lot of the times, these brothers and these sisters, they don't even know the sunnah properly. And they just assume that it's not from the sunnah. Okay? Sometimes it's a lack of, and that's why it's very important to be humble. And to say that, sometimes they will say, I have never come across this. It doesn't matter if you haven't come across this. It doesn't matter if you haven't come across it. It's not a condition that all knowledge has to be confined within the boundaries of your ilm. And there's a lot of knowledge that you may not know. There is a lot of knowledge out there that you may not know. And so Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is a famous hadith. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah is narrating hadith number 1023. The Prophet Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم said, وَمَا اجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ. There is whenever, he's saying وَمَا اجْتَمَعَ, there is no group, but I will translate it as whenever a group of people gather in the house of Allah, فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ, in any of the houses of Allah, a masjid, or even in their own homes, they gather to recite the Qur'an. Have you found gathering? They gather to recite the Qur'an. يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَ, and they study it. They learn the meaning, they learn the translation, they take fawaid from it, they take tafsir from it, they take, fawaid from it, and lessons from it, and ahkam from it. Whenever a group of people are studying Allah's kitab, and inshallah, we are studying the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, which is an explanation of the kitab. And so, inshallah, we hope to Allah that Allah will include this gathering also from those gatherings. And all Islamic halaqat to be, inshallah, as an extension of studying the book of Allah, inshallah. Of course, the ones in which you're actually learning the letters and the ayat of the Qur'an, that is more directly applicable from this hadith. Whenever they gather to study the book of Allah, an ayah from the Qur'an, a surah from the Qur'an, إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةِ, automatically and instantaneously, Allah will send down calmness and peace upon that gathering. People will find peace in that gathering. Unless, of course, their heart is contaminated. They'll feel pain, but eventually they'll feel peace. When that lock of the heart is removed, because of the dots, and the heart gets sealed, when that seal is removed from the painkillers of Quranic ayat, any good ibadah will initially feel like a pain. But once you get into the habit, once you do it repetitively, you will enjoy it. Once the lock is unlocked. So, nazalat alayhim sakina, they will feel peace and calm. And you, any Muslim, feels that. Correct or not? Sometimes because you're in a rush, you don't focus. But we all agree that when you go to the masjid and you hear the recitation of the Qur'an, you feel peace. You don't have to be Muslim to confess to this. Even non-Muslim agree to this. Have you not seen those social experiments? A non-Muslim listens to the Qur'an and they love it. They find peace in it. And so sakina, whenever you're studying the Qur'an and gathered to study the Qur'an, then Allah will send down His sakina, peace and calmness. وَغَشِيَتْهُمُ الرَّحْمَةِ. And Allah's mercy is enveloping, surrounding, all above, all around them. Allah's mercy is there for you. وَحَفَّتْهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. And angels, they come and gather from all sides. Subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah. وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. And Allah boasts about you and those who are dhakirin, who are reciting the ayat, in that dars, in the halaqah, in the ijtima', to the angels in His presence. These servants of mine, He mentions them by name, subhanallah. And this is the value, this is the importance, this is the beauty of Quranic gatherings. And so whenever you have an opportunity to attend a Quranic gathering, you must do so, you should do so, do not miss that opportunity. You know, there are so many things that we can take from this hadith. Along from them is that it is mustahab, it is rewarding to gather, to join gatherings of Quranic learning. Because there is in it, of course, mercy and sakina, and there are from the malaika, as we learned in our Islamic studies class 2 weeks ago, the malaika of different types and different tasks, and of them are the sayyahun, those who are they are traveling the whole universe and whole world looking for majalis of dhikr, and they come and join them. So, of all of these benefits, along with that, the fact that if you do it together in public, you are raising the Qur'an. You are publicly doing it. You are raising a symbol of Islam, which is the Qur'an itself, and honoring a symbol of Islam, which is the Qur'an itself, and so on. And of course, there is the benefit and the thawab of encouraging each other, benefiting from one another, and so on. Alhamdulillah. With this hadith now, we have finished the chapter of virtues of reciting the Qur'an and specific ayat and surah of the Qur'an. The next is chapter number 185, which is called Babu Fadl al-Wudu, chapter of virtues of doing wudu. We're not going to do that today, inshallah. We'll start that bi'idhnillah next week. In the meantime, if you have any questions about what we spoke about so far, please go ahead, and then we'll do a bit of Mustalah, some terminologies of hadith science. You know, we're studying it's called Mustalah. I'll tell you Mustalah, inshallah you'll understand. Mustalah means the subject of hadith related terminologies, mustalahat. So sahih, da'if, and so on. Are there any questions so far? Yes.
I have a question. So
yes, please.
This is basically from previous week.
Yep.
About evil eye.
Mm-hmm.
So you said that anyone can give evil eye, even
Yep.
to yourself.
Yep.
So if you give evil eye, are you sinful, or is that a sin?
If someone intentionally gives evil eye, then you are sinful. Indeed, you are sinful. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, why is one of you killing your brother? If you do it intentionally, if it's accidental, that's one thing. It'd be very precautious. But if it's intentional, then it's a big sin. So we should avoid that. No, if someone is like, for example, wanting to trying to, and there are people like that, strange people out there. So inshallah, be careful. Are there any other questions? Okay. You see, so far we've understood what a sahih hadith is, have we not? And we've understood what a hasan hadith is, have we not? And we've understood what a da'if hadith is, have we not? We have. We've talked about this. If you haven't, if you want to recall, you can revise or go back to one of those older videos, inshallah, towards the end, you'll find something there. We said that for a hadith to be sahih, there are 5 conditions. Does that make sense? One of them is that a person has to be trustworthy and upright. A person has to have a solid memory. It has to be a connected chain. The hadith has to be free from any irregularities or any deficiencies, or any irregularities, any defects, obvious defects. We said trustworthy. And so what is the meaning of trustworthy? Just for the sake of jogging our memory, I will just quickly go back to what da'if means. A da'if narration is that which has not fulfilled the conditions of any of the categories of sahih or hasan. So, say a hadith will be reduced from sahih to hasan if the memory of the narrator or one of the narrators, from being perfect or very, very, very strong, it becomes somewhat problematic. Just if that condition is missing, If it's very strong and 99% correct, for example, or 95% correct, that would be in the Sahih category, if it meets other conditions. But if the memory then goes down to a more common mistakes, then that would go to Hasan. It would come to good. Not authentic, it would become good. Now, if any of a da'if hadith is where it does not fulfill the conditions of any of the categories, so now we'd have a problem somewhere. For example, it would be memory would be weak, or a person would be untrustworthy. So the conditions are not fully fulfilled. And so da'if would have its levels of da'af, but that's what a da'if is. And as we said before, da'if does not mean discarded. Da'if means there is some sort of weakness in the chain of narration. And should there be, or where there is more than one chain saying the same thing, then they fortify and strengthen one another, and they raise the bar and raise the strength to something called Hasan. They become good standard. Now, we come to explanation of the definition of Sahih lidati. We said that from the conditions is that a person should be trustworthy and should have integrity. So what are we talking about? Integrity, what does that mean? What it means is that person who has integrity and is trustworthy, they have integrity in two regards. A, they have integrity and uprightness in their religion, and uprightness in their manners and etiquette. Someone may be, mashallah, praying day and night, but their manners and etiquette are not according to the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. They are not upright in the hadith sense, or for a hadith to be taken from that person. So istiqamah of the deen and istiqamah of the muru'ah. Muru'ah is a word, is very important. Muru'ah means a person who maintains the etiquettes of a man, of dignity, of honor, and so on. So the narrators in the isnad must all be known to be persons who perform their obligatory actions. You can't have someone who's trustworthy, but they don't pray their salah. That's a contradiction. They have to fulfill all of their obligatory fara'id and wajibat. And they have to be clearly avoiding all things which are sins, major and minor sins. Major and minor sins. If someone is lying, cheating, then they are not reliable. They don't have uprightness in their religion. They are lacking it. And then it's istiqamah and uprightness in their muru'ah, in their manners and in their etiquettes. The narrators must all be persons whom the people consider to be praiseworthy. Now, we live in a very selfish, individual world where people say, who cares what people think about you? The YOLO mentality. They think, no one cares. They'll forget you, no one cares about you. But the thing is, we are social creatures. Insan is from uns. We are social. We have to be in society. And so the way we carry ourselves and the way we engage with others is very important. If others have a negative opinion about you because of your bad character, if they're jealous, that's something else. If it's baseless, and that's a fitna, that's afflicted, that a person will feel at some point in their life, some more than others. But for you to have good etiquettes, for you to be respectful, for you to be humble, for you to show humility, for you to show adab, for you to show and so on, for you to be praiseworthy among your people, in your community, is very important. If say this guy, mashallah, he's got a lot of knowledge, but he's bi'adab. He has no adab. He's rude. He doesn't respect his elders. He's not kind towards his youngsters. He does not fulfill his duties towards his mother and father. Actually, that's a major sin. So that would be failing even in the religious regard. So the narrators must all be persons whom the people consider to be praiseworthy by way of character and etiquette, and are not looked upon as persons who indulge in acts of which are considered to be blameworthy. If a society considers something to be blameworthy, then this is blameworthy. So I'll give you an example here, just so people understand. Wearing the hat. Wearing the hat now is sunnah. Covering your head is sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ used to cover his head, okay? And he used to, most of the time, cover his head. He used to wear imama and so on. Now, leaving a sunnah doesn't make you sinful. Doesn't make you sinful. However, in certain countries and in certain cultures and certain times, to not wear a hat become a sign of a person not having muru'ah. Namely the subcontinent, the India and Pakistan and so on. For a person to not wear a hat, it showed that culturally this is not normal. Do you see? For example, in UK, in Western culture, if you go to work without a tie, what does it mean? It means like you don't care. Doesn't it mean that? Whereas in Eastern cultures, they're like, why are you trying to choke yourself for? Why are you trying to choke yourself? In fact, so many ulama say that wearing a tie is haram. They gave the hukum as well. Wearing Western clothes is haram as well. They gave the hukum as well previously. Because it was tashabbuh bil kuffar, wearing the clothes of the kuffar and so on. But do you see what I'm saying? Culturally, to not wear a tie in work, in a professional setting, if a lawyer was to walk into court without a tie, or the right attire was to walk in their tracksuits, he's still covering his awrah. But would he be considered to be blameworthy or not? He would be considered to be blameworthy, even though it's not a crime. So in a similar regard, culture has an impact on what is considered to be blameworthy or not. And so if, say for example, in the subcontinent culture, they have an emphasis on wearing the hat and covering your head, because that is the differentiation between, for example, other religions of polytheism and of Islam, and they respect it and uphold it. For you to then go and say, and try and wipe out that culture and say, oh, but it doesn't make any sense, why are you guys exaggerating, da, da, da. It's not gonna, you're basically arguing with yourself. Islam defends this. It's not a problem. So a sunnah which has become more practiced in a particular part of the world and they consider it to be a part of the culture, we respect that. Because even in usul al-fiqh and qawaid fiqh, we learn that urf, a person's culture, a people's culture is respected as long as it does not contradict sharia. If it supports sharia, then it's even better. But if it contradicts sharia, then the culture holds no weight. And so therefore, thus the narrators, by way of character and etiquette, and are not looked upon by people in their society, in their community. And when I say people, we're talking about people that are respected, ulama and so on, a'imma, respected, knowledgeable people in their community, not considered to be blameworthy. Thus the narrators are persons who engage in those actions which are known to be good amongst people, and they stay away from those actions which are known to be bad amongst the people. Known to be good, known to be bad. In certain cultures, for you to walk and eat is rude. It's against muru'ah. But in this culture, it's completely fine. But yet again, if you were to find, for example, a picture of Prince William or someone walking and eating, having a pack of Walkers, I'm sure it'll be on the news. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Standards and cultures are different from time to time, place to place, standard to standard. Even in hierarchy, if you like, you know. A narrator is known to be adil in his particular era by the endorsement. This is very important. So don't say, oh, but I don't care what my people think, because in another country people would say no problem about it. A narrator is known to be adil in his particular era by endorsement of other narrators of his era and his place. So your locality is important. Your home has to testify to your uprightness, in your piety, in your religiosity, and in your character, and in your etiquettes. The endorsement of a narrator must be done by more than one person, and these persons must also be known to be people of integrity. You can't get false endorsement from someone else. For example, a sinner can't say this person's a good person. A good person has to say this person's a good person. A person, an alim, who's knowledgeable and practicing salih and so on. So this is really important. Now, you might say, well, I'm not narrating hadith. You might not be narrating hadith, correct, but it shows that Islam respects etiquettes and cultures which uphold etiquettes. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, I have been sent with the very specific mission of perfecting character. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, indeed you are on the highest of character. And so if you look at the Prophet ﷺ and his humility, he was the greatest man. He is in fact the greatest of all of Allah's creation. No doubt whatsoever. He is the greatest of all of Allah's creation. And he's the greatest man ever. Because Allah has praised him and raised him to that station. And yet his humility, you know about his humility. You heard about it in his seerah. But I'll give you just one example. When he used to sit with his people, and if a person who was a foreigner used to come and visit the Prophet ﷺ, they would have to seek out the Prophet because he would be so immersed in his people, so closely sitting. He's not up there in some sort of a throne and commanding from above. He used to sit and mingle with the Sahaba. Companions, they're called companions. They call his companions. He didn't call them his students, though they are his students, of course, but he called them out of dignity, out of respect, out of honor, out of humility of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself even, subhanallah. So this is something for us to learn. It doesn't matter how high you climb and Allah takes you in dunya or in deen, always you have to remain humble, you have to maintain character and so on. So we said that a person who is considered to be trustworthy, reliable, a person of integrity, has to have uprightness, and they have to be upright in their religion, and have to be and has to be upright in their etiquettes and character. Now the next one is dabt, memory, we said. So what do you mean by memory? This description is given to a narrator who is known to report whatever she has seen or heard exactly as the narration or incident came to him or her. Meaning they are able to hold the details and recall perfectly without adding or subtracting. Sometimes you add details, sometimes you subtract details accidentally. For a person to have good memory and to have sound memory, they have to be able to preserve that which they heard without adding or subtracting. Minor mistakes made in the narration, do not go against the narrator. Minor mistakes here and there, a wow, missing a fa here and there, etc., is not a big deal. Certain words, certain letters, minor mistake, do not, because the message is still intact. Minor mistakes made in a narration do not go against the narrator, for no one is free from such errors. The soundness of a narrator's memory can be determined in two ways. Firstly, by comparing his or her reports against the reports of narrators known to have sound memory. So if you want to compare a person's memory, you compare it to another person who's got a good memory, and you see if it matches. Secondly, by endorsement made by the narrators who testify to the soundness of the person's memory. So one is by comparing actually what the narration is saying, and of course that's the job of the muhaddithin, but we're sharing information here. And the second is that a very, very trustworthy scholar, muhaddith, says this person has got good memory. A teacher says it, a shaykh says it, and so on. We'll stop up here, inshallah, not to make it too confusing, but in this way, inshallah, we'll progress. We'll read more hadith and we'll read more mustalah, and inshallah we'll progress like that. Are there any other questions? No questions? Then in that case, Jazakumullahu khairan, and we shall see you all tomorrow for the Tafsir class, and next week inshallah for our Hadith class, Riyadus, Saliheen, and of course Islamic studies as well, inshallah. Subhanakallahumma ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.